Greetings everyone. This is a quick promo before the video begins. If you're new to the channel and you didn't know it yet, I am actually an author in addition to being a YouTuber, and I have 2 books that you can get on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1 and The Occult Mafia. The first is sort of a bizarre, absurdist kaiju anime mashup, and the other is a horror noir story with a hint of a western thrown in there. They're both set in the same universe, and at this point have received mostly positive reviews, so you might want to check them out. I've provided Amazon links for both of them down in the description. They're both available in either paperback or Amazon Kindle, and Operation Red Dragon is also available in audiobook form. So if either of these strike your fancy and you want to support a struggling artist, feel free to go down and check out either one or both of them. Alright, the shameless self-promotion is out of the way, we can get on with the video. Thank you all for your support. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and it's once again time to see how Playmates is handling the Godzilla vs. Kong license. We've already reviewed the 2 giant figures, so now it's time to shrink things down. Today's subject is the 6-inch Godzilla with heat ray.
The figure comes in the standard kind of packaging. The tail and body are strapped to the cardboard, while the heat ray and battle damaged skin piece are held behind molded plastic, which can easily be peeled away to remove them. The back of the packaging doesn't reveal any significant movie details, aside from the tiny image of Warbat, formerly called Nozuki. Oddly, the image of Godzilla here has the coloration of the other 6-inch Godzilla. Of course, it was also clearly airbrushed and manipulated, so I see no reason to dwell too much on that anomaly.
We're not here to judge a figure by its packaging, but rather on its own merits. So how does this guy measure up?
Once it's out of the package, some assembly is required, but it's very easy to figure out. The tail is a ball and socket assembly, kind of similar to the various NECA figures. Unlike NECA though, attaching the tail is much easier.
For as much as I love the quality of the NECA figures, the tails were always a source of frustration for me because of what a real pain they were to put on. You had to soften them up first, either by dipping them in warm water or holding them under a blow dryer, and even then they could still be difficult. The ball joint was never static, so it was always moving around and you had to struggle to keep it in place. Sometimes the ball joint was on the tail and the socket was in the body, which made it extra difficult, and some of the spines would make it uncomfortable to hold. I mean, once it was all together it looked good, but in order to get it that way, it was a pain. So if Playmates has done one thing right, it's streamlined the process.
The barbell on the body is held in place, and the socket in the tail can be fitted over it without needing to heat it up first. Sure, you still have to fidget with it a little, but it goes on easily and is secure once attached.
Of course, the image isn't complete without the battle-damaged skin.
There are 2 tabs on the patch that fit into corresponding slots on the body. I find the easiest method is to fit the upper tab in first, then press until you reach the bottom. There will be a tiny indentation left on the bottom right edge, but this is where you would use your fingernail to pry it back off. Otherwise, it's a perfect fit. Articulation is about what you would expect. Both arms move at the shoulders, and both legs move at the hips. The arms can, in fact, almost complete a full rotation, but the legs prevent them from doing so. The feet are separate pieces from the legs and feel as if they might rotate, but I couldn't get them to budge and I didn't want to risk breaking it, so I left those alone. The head can turn a little, but it wants to stay facing forward, so forward it shall remain.
The tail, meanwhile, has the greatest range of motion thanks to the assemblage.
It can rotate a number of different ways and still look good without disrupting the overall appearance too drastically. You know, as long as you don't turn it upside down, but how likely are you to do that? Now, you may recall that the giant Godzilla had a massive flaw in how the sculpt on its left side was completely broken by screw holes, meaning it only looks good when viewed from the right.
On the big figure, it's a glaring issue that's hard to overlook. But thankfully, it's not present on the smaller figure.
There are no screw holes to be found anywhere on this guy, so no matter which way he's facing, he looks good. That's not to say the mold is flawless, of course. Unlike the giant Godzilla, the bottoms of the feet aren't detailed, which is unfortunate, but ultimately not too big of a deal.
I do appreciate full detail, but when it's absent from the feet, I can let it slide.
The hip joints detract the most from the look, being areas that were obviously hollowed out slightly more than was needed and with notches to stop the legs from going too far forward or backward. However, thanks to the scale and the dark color, I find them easy to overlook. Detail is about the same as on the giant Godzilla, with smoother texture on the plastic portions than on the rubber portions. The smaller size works to the figure's advantage here, as it makes Godzilla's skin look just a little more film accurate than on the giant figure.
Again, it's not on the same level as a NECA figure, but it is an improvement.
The smaller size also helps with the dorsal fins. Again, just as it is on the giant figure, these are more pliable than other portions, but the smaller scale makes them sturdier, so none of them are warped. The battle-damaged skin is sculpted on both sides so as to fit in place, and when inserted, it blends in nicely with the rest of the body. The exposed wound has texture that resembles muscle and hints of a rib cage, but it's relatively smooth compared to the rest of the figure.
Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, the small Godzilla has its feet in a permanent walking stance like its big brother.
Unlike the giant figure, though, the small Godzilla's legs aren't spread as far apart, which means you can adjust them to make it look like he has a neutral pose without it looking too awkward. As such, there are more possibilities for posing this figure. The tail also has a different shape to it, with an upturned twist at the end as opposed to a dragging S-curve. Despite being a smaller part of the figure, it adds a bit of dramatic flair to the overall appearance, especially when the tail is repositioned.
In terms of color, this Godzilla is predominantly two-tone.
The primary colors are charcoal gray and bright blue, with the only variations being the white teeth, the pale pink tongue, the medium gray claws, and the solid red wound, which will usually be covered up and thus not seen anyway. The bone portions, sadly, are not white. The body is solid charcoal all the way down, with the only highlights being near the spines on the tail. With no other highlights, there's no concern about uneven painting. The teeth and tongue are also solid colors, and there's no issue with them, nor are there any with the toenails. His fingernails are another story. His left-hand claws are painted all the way to the base, but his right-hand claws have only a little bit of paint on the tips.
Now, I didn't really notice this discrepancy until I got in really close. But now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it.
It's a tiny detail to be sure, one that may vary from figure to figure, but it is a shame they couldn't have done a more even paint job there. And as so often seems to be the case, the eyes aren't quite even either. Again, you have to get really close to notice this, and I mean really close, practically on top of it. From any distance other than up close and personal, though, his eyes don't look bad at all.
The spines are the standout feature, though.
The choice was made to cast them in translucent blue with a hint of a gradient to it, meaning it's richer towards the base than at the tips.
I don't know why this choice was made, but I do approve of it because it looks really cool.
As you can see here, they are properly translucent and can be backlit for a really neat effect, opening up lots of possibilities for more elaborate displays. Lastly, I suppose we ought to look at the figure's main accessory, Godzilla's signature heat ray.
I just want to start by saying that I really appreciate how modern Godzilla figures have been incorporating the atomic breath as a feature. When I was a kid, I usually had to substitute blue Lego planks when playing with my Godzilla toys. So how does this one function when scrutinized?
Well, it's sculpted in the same semi-vapor, semi-flame appearance Godzilla's beam has in the Monsterverse. For some reason, the wide end is hollowed out, though it doesn't seem like anything is supposed to fit inside it. I guess it's just meant to add an extra dimension for visual flair. Like Godzilla's spines, the heat ray is translucent blue and can be illuminated.
How it fits in the mouth may not seem obvious at first, but it's pretty easy to figure out.
Now with NECA figures, the heat rays have come in two varieties. For figures like King Ugoji, the beam can be inserted into a slot in the back of the throat, while the 2019 Godzilla version 2 simply has one end of the beam fit loosely over Godzilla's tongue and the other rest in a blast effect. From the imagery on the packaging, you might think this Playmates Godzilla has a similar tab and slot idea to King Ugoji, but that's not the case. You may notice a little nub at the narrow end of the beam. Now, I couldn't get good images of it, but the roof of Godzilla's mouth has a cavity for the nub to fit in, and the jaw has just the slightest bit of give to it. So basically, you hold the beam with the nub angled upwards and insert it like so. It's just that easy. Once it's in place, the beam is suspended in Godzilla's mouth, and it will remain secure in there unless you really jostle him around. Now there is a little hint of a gap left that makes it clear the ray isn't coming from inside Godzilla, but I think that gives it more of a flamethrower effect, so I don't mind.
In conclusion, I would say this figure is vastly superior to the giant Godzilla. While it's still not perfect, and it's still not on the same quality level as what Bandai or NECA can produce, it has fewer flaws, and the flaws that remain don't detract from it much at all.
The figure looks good from any angle, and the translucent elements are eye-catching in a good way. In fact, I'll bet this figure would look amazing with the right kind of lighting. Up to this point, the best of these smaller variety kaiju toys I've seen is the Jakks 6-inch Rodan, thanks to its incredible attention to detail. This Playmates Godzilla is pretty close to matching it, and even looks good alongside it. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're to scale with each other, so if you want to display them side by side, they'll look like they belong together. It's much easier for me to recommend this one to collectors than the giant Godzilla, so long as you don't mind it not being as detailed as other figures on the market. With the right setup though, it'll look really cool.
Alright, that's 3 down. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, then go down to the description to find links to follow us on DeviantArt, Patreon, and Twitter. While you're there, you'll also find the Amazon links for the original novels Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, and The Occult Mafia. 2 books I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.